Good afternoon.
Abs-
I'm Wayne Percy, and I'm here this afternoon with Iris Benrubi. This is part of our Simply Success weekly series of discussing building relationships or building business. So this is Thursday at 3, Building Business, and our guest today is Everold Reid.
All right, Everold, I know that you've been a guest at Wayne's events, and you've also been a consistent top 1% sales achiever. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for having me, both of you. It's great to meet you, Iris. So I'm, 30-year veteran in sales, automotive mainly, and advertising and marketing for about 8 years of the 30. And from that experience, I went on to author a book on sales mindset principles and sales mastery, which has led to numerous other publications where I've created 4 new courses, major course on sales mindset principles and selling yourself in public, which is one of the talks I delivered at Wayne's event. And also the most recent, we're about to launch our first online automotive leasing course. So this course is designed specifically for the automotive space, and we're going to be doing that very, very soon.
Okay, so Everold, in general, I mean, our audience is very mixed. Most of them are either consultants, small business. There's an old philosophy of, nothing happens until somebody makes a sale. So we're all in the sales business in one way or another. What's your philosophy around sales?
Sales is really about building relationships. It's not about selling as people are, conventionally think about sales. One of the things I wrote a lot about and I speak a lot about is, how to deliver value, how to, to deliver unbelievable experiences. So it's about building a relationship, harnessing those relationships, and customizing solutions that are relevant to each client. It's not a one size fits all dynamic. So sales, it's not just product for money or services for money. It's about relationships and finding out what works for the individual, getting to know people so that you can customize solutions. And one of my greatest assets and benefits over the last 8 years since I returned to the automotive space and have been working and consulting is the amount of relationships that I've been able to build, that we've always been able to contribute both ways. So people that I sell to and serve actually are the ones that contribute most to my life. So it's fantastic. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, that's great because it fits right in with a question we have here from John, who says, people often confuse sales with manipulation. What would you say is the difference? So it's a perfect segue.
Well, absolutely. I mean, maybe in the past where a typical and still the typical salesperson tries to convince or to manipulate. I'd say they more try to convince instead of conveying information. So that's one of the key differences. You don't need to convince anyone to buy your product or service if you're actually helping them or showing them how your product or service improves their lives. And that's fundamentally, especially in a time like right now, where there's so many people at home and there's so much uncertainty. People need to be associated with others that are contributing to their lives. How does your product or service make my life better? How does it move me forward? And that's fundamentally the difference.
Now, you touched on value proposition there for a moment, if I heard correctly. So talk about value proposition here. You're working from home. How do you add value? And where does that help you in the sales process?
Oh, this is huge. It's and this is something that I actually enacted and have practiced since, since working from home or working from my private location. I reached out to, I specifically picked up 50 different clients and I sent them a personalized message. Each one personalized by name, not cookie cutter, just to reach out to say, hey, I'm here and I hope you're okay and I hope your family's okay. And you'd be surprised the amount of people that responded immediately. There were responses, and a lot within the same day, because people genuinely just want to see that you care. So in a time like this, it's about caring, it's about reaching out, it's about letting them know that you are there and you can help them if there's another way. Because when we get past times like this, your clients will remember the ones that reached out to say hello, to check in, to offer the value in themselves. So the value is not just in how much you get for the money. Um, it's it's more in the person and how much you contribute to improve that person's life. What do you actually mean to the other person?
Yeah, let me just say that I really love that, because it's about treating the person not as a dollar amount, but as a human being at the other end.
100%.
Okay. So I know in a time like this, how do you perpetuate sales? I know, for example, you do a podcast. What are
Yes.
some of the other things people can do at home to maintain awareness, to add value, to help other people?
Well, while you're at home, I think fundamentally this is a time for people to upgrade their skills. I think, you know, right after you, I think if you were going to do step one, two, three, one, you're outreaching to people, and checking in on family, checking in on neighbors, checking in with clients. Okay. That's a humane thing to do. That is the right first step. And then I think a number two first step is to take that time to learn more, to improve yourselves, to engage in coaching, to listen to podcasts. I have many courses that I've done online. You know, I'm a guy that writes courses and teaches courses, lecture at colleges and lecture to companies and speak, but I'm also learning. I'm also taking the time to get on webinars, to get on to download courses. I've watched a course on leadership from John Maxwell. I'm also doing right now the course with Darren Hardy on insane productivity. I'm contributing to other shows like yours. So, it's reaching out, improving yourself, and then, pivoting. This is an important time that while you have the time to reconsider how you can change your business or improve your business, so you can serve others in times like this. So it's an important time to realize, okay, is what I'm doing or what I've done in the past, will it work when we go back to the office? Will there be an office? And how do we sustain going forward with our clients?
One of our guests, Kevin, just sent in a question, and that was, what's the best method of outreach? Is it calling people on the phone? Maybe they're busy. Texting, email. What do you recommend? How do you build these relationships in isolation?
In the sales world, and the sales business and success world, one of the fundamental lessons in success is knowing your audience and knowing how to communicate with each audience, with each person or a group of people independently. Because if you know how to communicate, if you know that a particular client likes text or the particular client likes email or social media, whether it be LinkedIn messaging, and that's where they spend a lot of the time, you're automatically adding value by communicating with their style. So that's fundamental to understand how your clients communicate and to engage them accordingly.
Another question from Alexander. Why only 50 clients?
It's a start, Alexander. It's a start. That's a good question. Thank you. But I started by the initial 50, and I can prove to you, beside my computer, there's another stack there's another list, which I'm tackling tonight. But to answer that, some I reached out to on social, and some have reached out to me. And then we've constantly been communicating, but there are specific clients. Every company, you might have a good top 100 list or a good top 50 list of clients that you want to make sure you specifically talk to. you know, if you have thousands of clients, you can't email every single one unless you're going to do a mass email. And I don't want to do a mass email. I'm doing specific messages.
So what I'm hearing from you, if I can recap, is really looking at right now as a lot of things are slowing down. A lot of things need a new paradigm, new strategies on how to connect, that you're actually planting the seeds to create a stronger relationship with existing clients so that when this COVID is over, that you actually have a solid foundation on which to co-create something together.
Absolutely. Just think, whether that's a month, 2, 3 months, 6 months down the road, if the one who's in communication in a time of uncertainty or in a time when there's change, you know, will probably be the one that gets more attention when things are back to normal. People remember how they've been treated. They remember how you make them feel. So it goes back to ABC. It's not rocket science. It's really, at the end of the day, people helping other people. And if you're contributing to one's lives by making them feel better just by checking in, you know, I'll remember everybody who checked in with me. I'll remember these moments. I'll remember these times, especially on LinkedIn or on text messaging. If when you text someone 3 months from now, you realize that there was a text message there or a LinkedIn message there pertaining to this time, they'll remember that that was the last time you checked in with them. And that immediately reminds them that you were there at that time.
So one of our guests, I know, one of the viewers, is just starting his own new consulting practice. Month into starting a consulting practice, maybe has 100 people on LinkedIn, just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
What's he do next? It sounds like, I mean, he can't reach out to the 50 people like you can.
Mm-hmm.
How does he build that list?
Yeah, this is a great question, because one of the webinars, the learning webinars I was on this morning with Sales Success Podcast is a group, or Sales Success webinar by Scott Ingram. So if you want to, that's a tip I'll throw out there. Follow Scott Ingram. He collaborates high achievers and top sales professionals from across North America, and he condenses and distills all the finest or the top information into one for you. So I was on his webinar this morning, and there were several LinkedIn experts. There were, in fact, 36 LinkedIn experts giving specific advice as to how to grow and to build and to post on LinkedIn. And some of the takeaways, if you're starting out, number one, I think it's a phenomenal time to start. It's a great time to start. This is not, look at this as an opportunity that you are a month in, because you're going to learn so much more in the next month or in the next 2, not just about clients, but and business, but about yourself as a person if you're starting out. So one of the tips would be, definitely try to engage. You're learning your audience at this point, so you won't knock anything out of the park in the first month. But part of growing and being successful on LinkedIn is knowing when to pivot, knowing, definitely engaging and engaging with thoughtful comments, thoughtful posts. So if you're liking somebody and you're reaching out to connect with someone, don't just hit connect. You know, send them a personal message as to why you'd like to connect. One of the things I also do on LinkedIn is, every single person that comes up with a birthday every day or a work anniversary or they've changed their role, I reply with a personal message to that individual. That, because number one, they're in my connection, which is why I'm getting the notices. So if they mean anything to me, which they do, and it's their birthday, you should reply. So I reply, happy birthday, hope you're having a fantastic day, something like that. Or in the case of the connections, every connection I get today, and this has been going on for weeks now, every single connection, the reply is, thank you for connecting with me, hope you and family are keeping safe. Okay, that is what you need to do, because it's relevant.
It's interesting. I've just turned off my birthday on LinkedIn because last time I had a birthday, I got 300 congratulations on your birthday messages. It took me 2 days. So I've taken that
That's
away.
just a whole bunch of people that love you, Wayne. What are you talking about? They want to have a big party.
Yeah, but if they showed up as customers, it'd be okay. But anyway, now reaching out to people, there's a whole bunch of philosophies out there on how many times you have to connect with somebody before you make a sale. So I'm hearing two things from you. One is be genuine in your connections, but two, if I heard right, you're not expecting that to be a sale. How many times do you have to connect with somebody to make a sale if you're genuine?
Well, you definitely want to be genuine going in, or else if you make any sales, it'll be once. There won't be any repeat and referral business from it. So your authentic self is definitely important. So that's number one. And you have to be adding value with what you're selling, and you have to be authentic. And you have to keep in mind how it improves their circumstances. So how do you get more? How do you make the sale? And how many times? So in sales, there's a theory that goes back and is tested scientifically. The amount of qualified follow-ups that you need to make is in excess of 5. So if you're reaching out and your first is a greeting, first connection, and there's a birthday or an anniversary, or you sending out something about your promotion or your product, you have to build a relationship, especially if it's online, and you have to, whatever you're proposing or advancing has to add value, has to be something that they can use to advance their lives as well, and there has to be purpose. So it may take 5 or 6 times. You may get lucky and it might be 2 or 3 times, but if you haven't passed 5 and you're giving up, it's way too early. So you need to nurture those relationships, listen to the feedback you receive from those relationships. If you don't know the information, go and research it and respond with proper information, but expect 5, 6, 7 times before you may get a deal or a sale.
That's great, because it kind of answers what Brian here asked, which is, for your closer connections, how often should one reach out to connect, staying top of mind without becoming a pain? What would you say to that?
Well, if you're doing regular posts that's adding value, you are actually reaching out to them without directly messaging them. So if you're like, for example, I restarted posting some tips of the day because I've written some articles that are going to be posted now weekly, and from within the articles we're taking tips and doing those every day. So that is engaging with your audience. So one of the ways to acknowledge that they're there is when they like your posts, or they make a comment, you make damn sure that you acknowledge their like or respond to their comment with thought. That's the way to do it, because it's not just about reaching out to sell, it's about engaging and having a communication. That's where the value comes in.
Just a quick point here for those watching. Please send us any questions you have in the chat in the bottom of the bar. Little chat bubble just to the right in the middle. Send us in questions like Brian and Kevin did.
There's some good questions so far.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far about selling, or about life, or about relationships, or building business? What's that one, the nugget?
I think the one nugget for me that has paid 100-fold, if not more, is that if you set out to sell or to provide a service or a product where you genuinely come across as very interested in how the product or service affects that person's life, you almost don't have to sell anything to them again. You'll be that trusted advisor and solutions provider going forward, because I can tell you that the majority of people that I've sold vehicles to while at Lexus have become my avid supporters. They're not clients anymore. Like, there's a ton of people. The top 5 people that are in my huge support circle, I have sold a combined about 40 cars to the same 5 people. But it's not about the amount of vehicles I've sold them. There's a reason why I sold them that many vehicles, because it's easy. I've made it simple for them to acquire a vehicle. So it's one problem they don't have to worry about. So that's a good tip about selling as well, is when you're taking away the problem out of the consumer's hand and you're solving it for them. And that's even before they know they have a problem. So those people have been my biggest supporters. So personal advisors and and managers like Howard, who's helping me out, who you know. My corporate lawyer is a client. I have another person in the circle that's a senior VP at RBC, and many others like them. These are people who I sold cars to. And by serving them and uplifting them and offering value in simply selling them a car that they can get anywhere else, we've formed massive relationships where we contribute to each other's lives, and we're very interested in seeing each other succeed.
Yeah, I really like that, because what you've addressed is, one, if you're selling something, you want to be clear on what is the problem that you're solving. How
Yeah.
do you make it easy for the other person? And how do you create a relationship with this person where they feel they can trust you, so that they don't have to go through that whole thought process the next time they need something? They know you're the one.
Yeah. And just think about it. There's the whole, stereotypical car salesman or car sales as a chore. People hate buying cars, right? So if they hate buying the cars, but you make it easy and you take that problem away from them, in theory, you become, a huge part of their lives, because there's that trusted person when there's a need that they reach out to.
Just as a little story, if you will. A couple of years ago, I was at a golf tournament. Client came up to me, he said, "You're a recruiter. We asked you to do a search for us and you turned us down." And I said, "Yes, your junior staff called me up and asked me about a sales position, and they wanted to offer $10 as the fee. And sorry, I won't do that." And he said, "You're turning me down." I'm like, "No, I'm just turning down that opportunity." And he said, "Okay, so," and it was kind of like the smart ass thing. He said, "So what would you do?" And I said, "I charge you 3 times that much." And like, very surprised. And I said, "But the guy you lost was selling, $100 a year. And by paying me $10, you're going to get somebody that sells $80 a year off of, LinkedIn or Indeed or Monster. What I'll do is I'll give you somebody that sells $200 a year, but I'm going to charge you 3 times the fee."
Yeah.
He went off, played his second 9 holes of golf, and before dinner, his junior assistant called me back and said, "I'm sending you the contract. Please fill in your own fee. When can you start?" Right? And it was the value proposition that you mentioned.
Yes.
Was I'm not trying to sell him something. I was solving a problem that he didn't even understand he had.
Yes. And it's very important that when you're selling your product or service, that it's not just the convenience that you, the person, provide in the transaction or in the consultation. That's one aspect, or one main aspect of it, because that's relationship, that's trust, that's everything. But the other key part is in your product or service. How does the product itself as well solve their problem? How does their service impact their lives and their kids' lives and their families or their co-workers' lives? So one quick example is, I fundamentally believe in Lexus and Toyota as a product. And I fundamentally believe in it as a product, not that I won't buy something else or I won't drive something else, but the problem it solves is that it takes away the pain that consumers would often have with other brands of consistent repairs and consistent breakdowns, or the cost of ownership is lower and the satisfaction rating is higher. So there is the personal value proposition, and then there's the knowing your product and service value proposition.
Interesting, because this gets on the touch and value. I had a friend 5 years ago, 10 years ago, looked at buying a Hyundai van. And one of the other, it was one of my business partners actually. One of the other partners bought a Honda Odyssey van.
Yeah.
And the Honda Odyssey, the monthly payments were $150 more than the Honda. But the cost of ownership over 5 years of the Honda Odyssey was about half of the cost of ownership of the Hyundai, because the cost of repairs and maintenance and rental cars, things like that. That didn't include the frustration. It was just
and the frustration, and one of the problems that we're solving today is people's time, right? Because even if the costs were similar, with less frequency of, let's say, the Honda versus the Hyundai product, who wants to be sitting in the service department every 3 months for 3-4 hours? Or who wants to be without their vehicle? So this is just an analogy. People have, if you're selling a product or service, you have to know where your value proposition is. And it's not just the initial sale value proposition, is how it affects their lives and adds the convenience for years to come.
So how important, obviously we have to solve somebody's problem. How important is it for us to save them time as well? Because we often miss that. It's kind of like, warranty is part of the price.
Yeah.
Quite often people miss that point, that, I'm paying this price, but I'm getting this level of service, this level of warranty, or this level of confidence. How important is the time element as part of the value proposition?
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, which is what I was just basically trying to allude to, is we see this every day where clients can either drop their vehicles off, and I'm just using this as an analogy because there's a huge time factor involved in selling and servicing vehicles, or selling and servicing, if you're in real estate or in the financial sector. Time is important to people. So does that mean you go to the person to, you go to the client's home or work? Does that mean you meet them after work, after hours? There are so many ways that we can, especially now, this is such a crucial time where people's time, they may have more of it than they ever thought they would, or they cared to. What do you do with this time right now? How do you increase value? How do you add value to others? So the whole, if you're saving people's time and you can articulate that in your sales pitch, I talk about that all the time. When the client's comparing even other premium brands to our premium brand, and like, okay, that's great. It may be faster, it may perform nicer, but if you have these concerns now, these are potentially the concerns to look forward to later, where it may be taking away a lot more time than you're willing to give.
Okay. Now, you run a bunch of sales programs. I know you run sales programs for automotive dealerships. You also run sales programs for small business people like myself, or like Iris, or Kevin, who's a school photographer, or Bazad, who's starting to practice. What programs do you have, and how can somebody engage with you to learn more?
After publishing the book, the first course I developed was on sales mindset principles, and it was by fluke. And it was delivered to a company, to a 70-year-old company in Jamaica, of all places, and where I'm from. So we connected, and believe it or not, folks, I believe we connected either on Facebook or LinkedIn, where I connected with one of the sales reps who's a manager at the company. So connections and social media connections do work. And from that connection, I ended up traveling there to speak to their group. And this is a 70-year-old company. So the reason sales mindset principles is fundamental, because especially with older companies or new people getting into business and sales, you may have a particular mindset where it does not resonate. You may sell a few products, you may make a little bit of money, but you'll always have frustration with growth, and you won't grow that well, and you won't truly realize your full potential. So Sales Mindset Principles talks about, choosing the right products and services that you can be passionate about representing, how to set goals, and, not do your regular way of setting goals just by numbers and timeline. How to follow up. I teach people how to actually write an email to follow up, how to send a message to follow up, how to make the phone call, because the how and the why is important as the what. And we talk about discipline, and personal development is number one. If you are not investing in yourself, you will never, absolutely never realize how truly successful you could have been. So one of the things I will share with you and your audience is, prior to writing the book, I only read 3 books in my life, but I can tell you in the last 3 years, it's actually more like 2.5 on Audible on my phone. I'm up to 30 books that I've listened to, and I've listened to all of them at least twice while driving. And this is while doing nothing during no extra time. So you don't have to take extra time to read if you can do it while, you're in your car, you're at the gym, you're going for a walk, etc. And rituals, those things matter huge. So there's 9 or 10 principles that I talk about. And that's one of the biggest courses, because you can go out and start any business, small or large, but if you don't have the right mindset and your team doesn't have the right mindset, collectively, you'll never realize your true potential.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you talked about at the beginning, about this is the time to upgrade your skills. So for people that are interested, where can they find you?
So thereidmethod.com is the website, and definitely on LinkedIn. So you can just type in my name, Everold Reid, on LinkedIn, or the Reid Method on LinkedIn. And the podcast, I think, is on the screen behind me. The Reid Method Insider is my podcast, and it's based on personal development and success principles that we gather all the information and from special guests from all over the world, such as Les Brown and many CEOs across, many Silicon Valley CEOs across the world.
And that's REID method. And
Yeah.
one last comment here in question: follow up with emails are so important, especially for technical consulting projects. This is from Behzad. What is the most practical way?
Okay, can you just repeat the question one time?
Follow-up emails are so important, especially for technical consulting projects. What's the most practical way, I'm assuming, of following up in your opinion?
Okay, definitely knowing the timeline. Timeline in follow-up with emails is vital. So that, if you've had a meeting today or a phone conversation today, typically you could do a summary of that talk or summary of that discussion and send it in an email, and always end the email with the next step or what the next call to action will be, or with a question. And you should also end email, basically stating, if I don't hear back from you in the next day or 2, then I'll follow up then. So everybody knows what the expectations are with the email. And I also suggest, when you're writing emails, don't make them too technical, even though it may be technical stuff that you're talking about, but sometimes simpler is better. And not necessarily telling the story, but using bullet points, links, graphs, things that people can use, can even glance at on their smartphones.
Going back to my ad agency days, we used to have to do call reports after every telephone call or every meeting. And basically, it's today's version of an email, or today's version is an email summarizing the call, summarizing the activity, summarizing the next steps, the timing, who's doing what the expectations are, what the deal is. And so going back to the old ad agency days, an email now is a call report that you should do literally every time you contact the client. Now, if you're contacting them by email, maybe you follow up with a phone call or you follow up in some other method. But if you're talking to them by phone, it's a great excuse to have another touch point with them right afterwards.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I fundamentally believe in that, because that's, usually the practice when I reach out to clients at the dealership, in our portfolio, one email, and if there's no response, There may only be one follow-up email, but if not, it's definitely a phone call that's coming next.
Okay. Everold Reid, thereidmethod.com. Thank you very much for being our guest today. And we'll be posting this both on YouTube and on Millionaire Flix. And oh, hang on. No, I thought we got another question.
Well, we had quite a few questions. That's great.
We do have another question. Yes.
Sometime we do not see or hear from our clients, even after follow-up. You may have answered this. What would be the best action in this situation?
Well, if I don't hear or from my clients after follow-up, so if you've emailed, if you've called, you could, if it's within a location, within distance, you definitely should stop by, or you could send a postcard, stuff like that. Or you can call and ask for somebody else within the company just to make sure. And I've done that many times too. And I can tell you, I'll give you a quick example here before we go, is, in my client base at the dealership, and yes, I do two things. I work at the dealership, but I also have my own firm. We have an older demographic of clients. And even when some of them are in Florida for the winter, I call them or I'll reach out to them in Florida. Or if I haven't heard from a client or seen them in 3 to 6 months, I'll still call. So email, call, a card, social media if they're there, their text messaging if that's what they prefer, or call somebody else to see how the person is doing.
Find an excuse to keep in touch.
Find an excuse. They'll appreciate it.
Everold, thereidmethod.com. Thank you very much for being our guest today.
Absolutely. Anytime, Wayne. Thank you so much. Great to meet you, Iris.
And thank you for everybody online that joined us this afternoon.